Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories. Please like and subscribe, and hit that notification icon so you never miss out. Now on with the stories.
I'm still livid as I sit here, trying to put into words the frustration and anger I've been feeling for the past 9 months. It all started when our Homeowners Association decided to hire a contractor to build a soundwall behind our house. Sounds simple enough, right? Wrong. The contractor they hired was supposed to be professional, but it quickly became apparent that they had no idea what they were doing. They tore out over 2 feet of landscaping in our backyard, which is only 15 feet wide to begin with. I was horrified when I saw what they had done. The worst part was that they were clearly over the property line, and I knew that if they continued, it would compromise the integrity of the $10,000 fence we had just installed. My husband and I immediately asked them to stop what they were doing, but they just kept going. We were at a loss for what to do, so we contacted the HOA and explained the situation. You would think that they would take responsibility for the mistake and fix it, but nope. Instead, they sent us a demand letter threatening to charge us extra fees for requiring them to stay within the approved easement. I was livid. How could they possibly expect us to pay for their mistake? We met with them to try to resolve the issue, and they agreed to a 3.5-inch easement from the property line. Or so we thought. It turns out they mistakenly thought it was from the point of encroachment, which is a completely different thing. Now they're threatening to sue us again. I'm at my wit's end. Do they really have the right to do this? We've been without the use of our yard and sound wall for 9 months now, and it's taking a toll on our daily lives. The CC&Rs, covenants, conditions, and restrictions, clearly state that the HOA is responsible for the wall and the yard that the contractor wrecked. Why are they trying to shift the blame onto us? The biggest concern I have is that if we don't sign a new easement, they'll take us to court and force us to do it anyway. I already have a small yard, and the thought of giving up even more of it is unbearable. It's not just about the space, though. It's about the principle of the thing. Why should we have to compromise our property because of the HOA's mistake? I've been doing some research, and from what I can gather, the HOA is trying to use a tactic called adverse possession. It's a legal concept that allows someone to claim ownership of a piece of land if they've been using it for a certain amount of time. But in this case, it's not like we've been using the land for years without permission. The HOA hired a contractor who made a mistake, and now they're trying to take advantage of it. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know I'm not going to give up without a fight. I'll do whatever it takes to protect our property and our rights as homeowners. It's frustrating that we have to deal with this, but I'm determined to see it through. As I sit here, looking out at the mess that was once our beautiful backyard, I can feel my blood pressure rising. How could the HOA be so reckless and irresponsible? Don't they care about the people they're supposed to be serving? It's not just about us either. What about the other homeowners in the community who could be affected by this? I know I'm not alone in this fight. There are other homeowners who have had similar issues with the HOA, and I'm determined to rally them together to take a stand. We deserve better than to be bullied and taken advantage of by the very people who are supposed to be looking out for our best interests. I started by reaching out to some of our neighbors. I went door to door, explaining our situation and asking if anyone else had experienced similar problems. To my surprise, several of them had. One neighbor, Sarah, told me about how the HOA had fined her for having her trash cans out a few hours early, even though it was an honest mistake and her first offense. Another neighbor, John, shared how the HOA had forced him to repaint his house a specific color that he didn't like, even though it wasn't specified in the CC&Rs. Hearing these stories made me even more determined to fight back. I decided to organize a community meeting to discuss our grievances and come up with a plan of action. I created flyers and distributed them throughout the neighborhood, inviting everyone to come to our house on a Saturday afternoon. The day of the meeting arrived, and I was nervous about how many people would show up. To my relief, about 20 of our neighbors came. We gathered in our living room, and I started by explaining our situation in detail. I showed them the photos of the damage to our yard and the letters from the HOA. Then, I opened the floor for others to share their experiences. It was eye-opening to hear how many people had been negatively impacted by the HOA. Some had received fines for minor infractions, while others had been forced to make costly changes to their properties. We all agreed that the HOA was overstepping its bounds, and that something needed to be done. We decided to form a committee to address these issues. We called it the Homeowners Rights Committee. Our goal was to hold the HOA accountable and ensure that our rights as homeowners were protected. We divided up tasks, with some of us focusing on gathering evidence, others on researching legal options, and a few on communicating with the rest of the neighborhood. One of the first things we did was hire a lawyer. We pooled our resources and found an attorney who specialized in property law and had experience dealing with HOAs. We shared all the information we had gathered, and he agreed to take on our case. He explained that while adverse possession was a potential issue, it was unlikely to hold up in court given the circumstances. This gave us some hope. We also started attending HOA meetings as a group. Previously, most of us had avoided these meetings because they were long and tedious, but now we saw them as an opportunity to voice our concerns and demand answers. At the next meeting, our committee showed up in full force. We were polite but firm, asking pointed questions about the HOA's actions and demanding accountability. The board members were clearly taken aback by our sudden show of force. They tried to downplay our concerns, but we persisted. We presented our evidence and asked them to explain their actions. It was clear that they were not used to being challenged in this way, and they struggled to provide satisfactory answers. Despite their evasiveness, we continued to press them. We requested that they halt any further work on the soundwall until the property line issue was resolved. We also demanded that they reimburse us for the damage to our yard and the legal fees we had incurred. The board members promised to take our concerns under advisement, but we could tell that they were not taking us seriously. In the weeks that followed, we continued to gather support from our neighbors. We created a petition outlining our grievances and collected signatures from nearly everyone in the neighborhood. We also reached out to local media, hoping to draw attention to our plight. A reporter from the local newspaper came out to interview us and wrote an article about our fight with the HOA. This brought even more attention to the issue and put additional pressure on the board. As our committee gained momentum, we started to see some small victories. The HOA halted the construction of the soundwall, at least temporarily. They also agreed to meet with us regularly to discuss our concerns. While these were positive steps, we knew that we had a long way to go. Our lawyer continued to work on our case, gathering evidence and preparing for the possibility of a court battle. He advised us to document everything from the damage to our yard to any interactions we had with the HOA. We took his advice seriously, keeping meticulous records and taking photos of the ongoing issues. The more we dug into the HOA's actions, the more we realized how poorly they had been managing the community. Financial records were a mess, with questionable expenses and a lack of transparency. It became clear that the board was not only overstepping its bounds but also mismanaging our funds. This gave us even more ammunition to use against them. As we continued to build our case, we also focused on rallying more support from the community. We held regular meetings, both formal and informal, to keep everyone updated and motivated. We created a newsletter to share information and updates with all the homeowners. It was important to keep the momentum going and ensure that everyone felt involved in the fight. One of the most challenging aspects of this ordeal was the emotional toll it took on us. My husband and I were constantly stressed and anxious, worried about the outcome and the impact on our property. We spent countless hours researching, meeting with neighbors, and preparing for meetings. It felt like a second full-time job, and it was exhausting. But despite the challenges, we remained determined. We knew that we were in the right and that we had a strong case. The support from our neighbors was also incredibly motivating. Knowing that we were not alone in this fight made it easier to keep going, even when things seemed bleak. As the months went by, our efforts started to pay off. The pressure we put on the HOA began to show. Board members started to resign, either because they couldn't handle the scrutiny or because they realized they were in over their heads. New elections were held, and several members of our committee ran for positions on the board. To our delight, a few of them were elected. With new leadership in place, we hoped for a fresh start. The new board members were more receptive to our concerns and willing to work with us to find solutions. They agreed to an independent audit of the HOA's finances and promised to be more transparent in their actions. While there were still many challenges ahead, it felt like we were finally making progress. One of the first actions of the new board was to address the soundwall issue. They hired a new contractor to assess the damage and come up with a plan to fix it. This time, they included us in the planning process, ensuring that our property line was respected and that the work would not cause any further damage. It was a relief to finally have our voices heard and our concerns taken seriously. The new contractor was much more professional than the previous one. They took the time to understand the issues and worked carefully to avoid any further damage to our yard. They also communicated with us regularly, keeping us updated on their progress and addressing any concerns we had. It was a night and day difference from the first experience. While the sound wall was being fixed, we also focused on other issues within the community. The independent audit revealed several areas where the previous board had mismanaged funds, and we worked with the new board to implement better financial practices. We also continued to advocate for more transparency and better communication from the HOA. Throughout this process, I learned a lot about the power of community and the importance of standing up for what's right. It would have been easy to give up and let the HOA bully us into submission, but by banding together with our neighbors and fighting back, we were able to make real changes. It wasn't easy, and there were many times when I felt overwhelmed and discouraged, but in the end it was worth it. As I sit here now reflecting on the past 9 months, I feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. Our yard is finally being restored, and we have a sound wall that will actually do its job. More importantly, we have a stronger, more united community that is willing to stand up for itself. The fight with the HOA isn't over, but we've made significant progress, and I'm confident that we can continue to make positive changes. I've also learned the importance of staying informed and involved in community matters. It's easy to let others make decisions for you, but when those decisions impact your life and your property, it's crucial to be proactive and engaged. By attending meetings, asking questions, and holding our leaders accountable, we can ensure that our community is managed fairly and responsibly. In the end, this experience has taught me the value of perseverance and the power of collective action. It hasn't been an easy journey, but it's one that has made me stronger and more determined. I'll continue to fight for our rights and work towards creating a better community for all of us. Bring it on, HOA, we're ready for you.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.